It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of May 22nd, 1992. It was, of course, Memorial Day weekend. Also, a notable history on this particular day. This was actually the last day of Johnny Carson's Tonight Show after 30 years, a national event. And 3 days later, Jay Leno eventually premiered on The Tonight Show, and he had a long run, so a little bit of interesting history there. But you're here for the movies, and we have 4 movies here to look at today. Most of them are not very good, but they are interesting to talk about, to say the least. So let's go ahead and jump on into it. Let's start with the first movie that we have here. The most notable film that came out this particular weekend for a number of reasons, both good and bad. Mostly bad. This is Alien 3. Wow, that sounds amazing. Too bad it wasn't the movie we got. I mean, talk about one of the most misleading trailers of all time. I mean, nothing like that happens in the movie. Now, from what I was told, that was actually part of the earlier script that they had that they eventually decided not to do. But still, though, I mean, talk about one of the most misleading trailers of all time. But don't worry, we eventually do get the alien on Earth. It was unfortunately in a terrible alien movie, Alien vs. Predator Requiem. But this movie is really not that good. I mean, it's a bad movie. It really is. I mean, right from the get-go, it basically destroys most of the stuff that happened in Aliens. Like, it kills off every single person that survived in Aliens, except, of course, for Ripley, because she's Sigourney Weaver. She's the face of the franchise. Of course she's got to be the one that survives that one. And the movie just doesn't work. It's a movie that's all over the place. It's way too slow. There's nothing exciting about it whatsoever. It's a bad movie on so many levels. But at the same time, there are some good things about it. For one thing, the visual effects are still very impressive. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that still holds up to this very day. There's some great visual effects that still hold up, some great practical effects. This is stuff that still holds up to this very day. So much so that it even got nominated for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. And really, I can't argue with that because they still do look very impressive. And also, considering what follows after this movie, I mean, this one is bad, but I've seen much worse. I mean, Alien Resurrection I still think is the worst one of this series. The Alien vs. Predator movies are still terrible. I'm not the biggest fan of Prometheus. I know a lot of people are. I guess that's probably the best thing to come out of this series since Aliens. And I really didn't like Alien Isolation. I think that this series the series never really could live up to the hype of the first the Alien sequel. Aliens, James Cameron's Aliens, I should say. But those are really only the few positive things I have to say about it. And there are some memorable moments in here too. I mean, the moment where the alien has Ripley to the wall and the alien opens up and it's another alien mouth. I mean, that's one of the few things that still holds up with this movie. The ending for this movie is atrocious, and it's just a bad movie. It's just like the ending for this movie is completely ridiculous. The fact that apparently Sigourney Weaver only did this movie only for Ellen Ripley to die at the end, which thank God that didn't. Which it's a good thing that didn't work, because she was eventually back in the series 5 years later with Resurrection, and even worse in that movie. Like, at least in this movie, she was still her character. Alien Resurrection is, like I said, it's a mess of a film. We will eventually get to that movie down the road, but yeah, Alien 3 really is a mess of a film. It's a bad movie. It's definitely not the first 2 Alien movies, but at the same time, I've seen much worse from this series, so overall, I just think it's after years of thinking about it, I think it is just an overall mixed bag of a movie that is not great, but is certainly not great, but it's definitely a lot better than what came after the series, so after this movie came out, so I'm not even going to... So, Alien 3, it is what it is. It should have been a whole lot better, but actually there was one more positive. We got David Fincher out of it, and of course after this movie, he went on to become one of our great directors. Seven, Fight Club, Benjamin Button, Steve Jobs, Social Network. Yeah, he did Steve Jobs. Other great movies from him. So, there's at least that, so... But other than that, yeah, like I said, Alien 3 is not that good of a movie. Neither is our next movie, which is the Ron Howard's follow-up to Backdraft, and that's Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman in the sweeping epic Far and Away. I mean, talk about a movie that was trying to be the next great epic, like Dances with Wolves. Like, they were hoping for an Oscar with this movie, and I mean, there are literally promos that tell you what type of cameras they use, what type of cinematography they use. This was the first film shot in Panavision Super 70, and it was actually the first film shot in 70mm since Tron 10 years prior. And that would be something interesting if the movie actually was good, and it's not. I mean, its biggest problem overall is that it is too much of an Oscar bait type of film. I mean, you got Tom Cruise spotting a really lackluster Irish accent, I think. Yeah, it's an Irish accent. And then you have Nicole Kidman in here. It's basically another never work with your spouse type of thing, because most of the time it doesn't really work out. Although I will say Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman did eventually make a movie where they worked together, but it was still a really good movie, Eyes Wide Shut. But again, we'll get to that one down the road. But other than that, though, for the most part, this just feels like a movie that was made specifically for an Oscar bait reasons. Like Universal was trying to push this for an Academy Award or something, then to push Ron Howard into an Academy Award position, and it just doesn't work here. It just really, it's not for its lack of trying. There are elements in here that I think do work. I think the score by John Williams is pretty good. Like I said, the cinematography, as much as they make these claims, they are noteworthy because there are actually some interesting bits of cinematography in here. And I guess to the film's credit, Nicole Kidman probably really is the best thing that sticks out about this movie. Thomas Gibson kind of plays like a generic bad guy, kind of, and Tom Cruise, he's not terrible, but at the same time, that accent just gets really annoying really fast, and you don't really get invested in his character or his situation. And I don't think their chemistry, Cruise and Kidman's chemistry in this, is particularly any good. Like, I would say that Days of Thunder had a little bit better chemistry, and Eyes Wide Shut certainly had the better chemistry of the three films that these two were in. But as it is, like, Far and Away, an interesting concept, has some elements in there that do work, but it just boils down to a watered-down version of Dances with Wolves, just trying to be something that hopefully sweeps the Oscars in about a year from now, but it never did that. So, with that said, let's move on to another film that's on the completely far opposite end of this spectrum. Brendan Fraser is Encino Man. So a pretty simple concept here. Encino Man follows these two teenagers, played by Sean Astin and Pauly Shore. They discover a caveman in one of their backyards, frozen in a block of ice, and they teach him to learn to live in the 20th century. The caveman, played by Brendan Fraser. Now, this is not the best written comedy. This is not a smart comedy whatsoever, but I'm not gonna lie, it still made me laugh. It's actually a pretty funny movie, really. Really, probably the best movie Pauly Shore ever made, when he had it, because this started like a stretch of movies that he was in for Disney. Like, he did this, then he did Son-in-Law, In the Army Now, and then Jury Duty when he was at Sony. Neither one of those movies really were big success. I guess some of them were successes because they kept getting them to work, but this movie in particular, I think, is the strongest one of them all. I think it gets silly, but it's funny silly. It's the type of silly that, in a way, it kind of reminds me of Denver the Last Dinosaur, that TV series they did in the 80s, where it's pretty much the same concept, except multiply the teenagers that find this creature from the past. Instead of a caveman, it's a dinosaur, which was fine for what it is. Like, I put that on the same spectrum here. Neither one of them are great shows, groundbreaking shows, but they are having a good time with it. You could definitely tell that the people who made this movie were having the best time making it, and it does have some legitimately funny moments to it, so it got the job done. It's nothing spectacular, it's nothing incredible, but it is what it is. Encino Man, it's a fun movie. I'd say if you go in there, turn your brain off, you definitely have a good time with it. So that's Encino Man. Let's go ahead and move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is Europa. From director Lars von Trier, this is actually the last film of his Europa trilogy, which began with The Element of Crime in '84 and Epidemic. In fact, in North America, this actually got released under the title Zentropa. Basically the story as a young, idealistic American hopes to show some kindness to the German people. Soon after the end of World War II, in U.S.-occupied Germany, he takes on work as a sleeping car conductor for the Centropa Railway Network, falls in love with a femme fatale, and becomes embroiled into a pro-Nazi terrorist conspiracy. I'm reading this off the Wikipedia page because this is another one of those movies where I haven't seen it, but I will say, though, this trailer really intrigues me just for the visuals alone. It says that they took a lot of influence from Franz Kafka's America, and the title was chosen as an echo of that novel, and you could definitely see a lot of nice visual flair to this movie. The black and white meshes together well with the color scenes that they have in here. It really does pique my interest, and it does really make me want to see this movie. Like I said, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any of the other movies in this trilogy, but it is something that definitely makes me want to see the film, so I am really curious to check it out. I think I can get it with a Criterion release, so maybe at the next Criterion sale Barnes & Noble has, I definitely will look at it and get it picked up, so. But, yeah, acknowledging that it came out this weekend, that is Europa. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we only have 2 movies to look at next time. Whoopi Goldberg starring in Sister Act, which became the big comedy hit of the year. And we also have The Adjuster, a movie that I've never heard of, but we'll delve into it and see what it's about. So 2 movies to look at next time around. Should be an easy week to look at. With that said, though, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching, I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.